Hey everyone, Setu Shah here. I work on the machine learning team here at Headspace Health, and I'm here to give a talk about supporting mental health care delivery using NLP. Uh, I work mostly on the healthcare NLP intersection. That's what I did my master's thesis in, and that's what I've continued doing here at Headspace Health for the last 3 years. Uh, so the first question that most people have, just to understand and ground ourselves in where we are, what is Headspace Health, and how does NLP fit into what we are trying to do here? So in October 2021, Headspace and Ginger merged to form a combined company called Headspace Health. Headspace was focused on the wellness and well-being side of the house, uh, where they have a lot of mindfulness and meditation related content, a lot of uh, th- they provide a lot of care to people, 100 million people around the world, to support their journey through mindfulness and meditation. Ginger, on the other hand, is more on the clinical and in-person side of providing care, uh, and we serve a lot of customers, a lot of employers, and Ginger is provided via employers to employees as a benefit. Uh, so, to talk a little bit more about what specific areas both the eh, apps and services focus on, Ginger is focused on coaching, therapy, and psychiatry, whereas Headspace supports mindfulness, meditation, and wellness. Um, all of the work that we are going to be talking about today are focused on the Ginger coaching side of the business. Coaching is a big driver for the care provided via Ginger, and that's where a lot of what we do on the machine learning and NLP team comes from. So, in terms of just Ginger coaching, what are, again, the broad ways in which we apply and support by using NLP? So that includes things like coaching augmentation, where we can help our coaches provide the best level of care to our members. We also support with quality assurance, trying to ensure the care provided on our platform is of the highest level, and how do we ensure the quality is consistent across different coaches, across different conversations. The third area that we focus on is conversational insights, and that is key because it helps us extract things that show up in our conversations and make them more easy to digest for our coaches, provide them with views and features that they might that would be useful for them to present in their coaching session, but they might not have easy access to. But for most of the talk today, we're going to focus on the coaching augmentation side of the work that we have done so far, and how we empower our coaches to augment the work that they do, provide them the relevant information at the right time, and help them do their jobs better. So, to recap a little bit, if you're not familiar with coaching and mental health and wellness coaching, really the best definition for it comes from the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. And uh, the way I like to think about it is also like these are coaches are individuals that are working with clients to empower them, to facilitate them, and to provide them the care that can the care and support that can help them uh, go through their life, that can help them improve and develop habits, create a healthy lifestyle, and make the whole journey more manageable through both internal and external resources. So to and how does that play into what Ginger provides? So we provide text-based coaching to all of our members. This type of coaching is available 24/7 to all members. And so the member can have a team of up to three collaborating coaches that they work with. The primary coach that they have is called a lead coach, whereas others are just other coaches on the team. Um, each coach is working with multiple different members at the same time, that are at different levels of their care journey. Uh, and at the same time, all of our coaches are collaborating with the therapists and psychiatrists on the clinical team to provide comprehensive collaborative care for all of our members. So, to talk more specifically about the problems that we're trying to solve with NLP, those are four specific things that I'm going to share about, I'm going to talk about today. Safety risk detection, that is identifying when a member is displaying any anything about suicidal ideation or a risk about harming themselves. Clinical escalation, which is more focused on, are we providing the right level of care to members? Do they need a higher level of care than the one they are receiving? Smart reply and coach note summarization. So, to talk about safety risk detection, this is a critical piece of all of the machine learning and NLP work we do here within the team. And really, the goal here is to identify when a member is indicating that they are at a risk to themselves or to someone else. And if they are, in that case, triggering an assessment that a coach can go through with them and then go through, provide them with whatever care and support they need in that moment. Uh, so this includes things like when a member is at a risk of suicidal ideation, or they are at risk of harming themselves, or they are just in an extreme state of desperation and despair. Uh, to make such a prediction, we use a bunch of different types of signals that we get from that we get from the data. The primary form of which is the conversational data that we have. So every time a member sends a message to a coach, that's when our model runs. It tries to identify if there is any indication of risk in there, and we'll talk about how that happens in the next few slides. But uses that to then send back information onto the coach hub to provide coach with insight about, hey, this is somebody's displaying, uh, somebody is showing a suicidal ideation here. You need to take action immediately and help support them. uh, the one other aspect to note here is that the model that we use is a high recall model, and the reason for that is we want to make sure anyone that could potentially be at risk gets the support that they need, and that's why flagging a little more is fine as long as we can provide everyone the best quality of care. Uh, so this is a very traditional heuristics based NLP model. So it uses a bunch of part of speech tags, dependency parsing to be able to correctly classify and make a prediction for the model. So the first step of the safety risk detection model is just keyword detection. So we use a bunch of different keywords for different types of classes to identify if a trigger word has been used here. An example of that is here where it says, I feel like giving up, where giving up or give up or any form of that word or of that phrase would be a keyword that gets detected. Whereas if somebody's just indicating that they are tired, that would not be. Uh, the next step in the process that we do is attribute the keyword to the subject. And we want to ensure that anyone, when they are getting flagged, it is for that they are indicating that they are uh, at a risk. So that includes like just subject object attribution, identifying when the keyword that we've identified earlier is associated with self and not somebody else. Um, the next thing we do is to look at temporal identifiers. So one of the things that a lot of members do during their initial consults is go through the history of mental health of their mental health with the coach. So somebody could be talking about a suicidal episode that they had a few years ago, but they have recovered since and are feeling better now. And we don't want to flag that. That would not be that that would just add to noise that a coach has to deal with. So for that reason, what we're trying to do is detect temporal identifiers in the messages. So that only looks at recent history, that only looks at what happened in the last few days, or what's going on right now, and not something that's from distant history. Uh, and the last thing that or a couple of other things that we do are detect things like negations. If somebody is saying they're not suicidal, that's a very clear signal. And again, we do not want to flag that inappropriately when that's not the case. Uh, uh, and again, the last thing that we do here is identify modifiers that might also be applicable into the uh, and apply to the keywords. So things like other verb modifiers, adjective modifiers that can help provide more context to the coach when they are reviewing the transcript or trying to determine what is going on with the member. These are the types of things that are especially critical when the lead coach for the member is not online at the time we receive a message like this, and a new coach needs to be onboarded immediately and be provided the relevant context for why such a trigger was occurred and what steps they can take to complete an assessment. The next project that I want to talk about is what we call clinical escalation. And really, the crux of it is really simple. Is Are our members receiving the right level of care? Would they be better served in therapy? Would they be better served in psychiatry if they are at the coaching level? And that's really what we're trying to determine here. So this is a broader product that we've built, and it's much bigger than what safety risk does, but it follows a lot of the same principles. It is also a heuristics driven model, and but it is more focused to identify the specific cases when somebody is not receiving the right level of care. Another big change here compared to safety risk is that the predictions from the model go to a supervisor who can be a coaching supervisor or a clinician, and then they recommend if we should escalate the member to a higher level of care. Uh, and that insight is provided back into the coach hub. So, when we were looking at safety risk, the types of keywords or the types of categories that we are looking for are more very narrow. They're specific to somebody indicating risk. However, in the case of clinical escalation, we are looking for a lot more. We're looking for things like conditions. So when somebody is indicating they have something about depression or anxiety or PTSD or any type of diagnosis that they have had in the past, we're looking for symptoms about how those diagnoses might show up for people. We're looking at medications, at common medications that somebody might indicate they are taking right now, or previous experiences. If somebody has had traumatic episodes, those are other important things for which they might be better served with therapy or psychiatry. And lastly, we are also looking at clinical status to say if somebody is already using external services that are more attuned to therapy or psychiatry, that's something uh, that might be more useful to them as well. Um, the next project that I want to talk about is what we call Smart Reply. This is very similar to how Gmail does Smart Reply, where for every email that pops in, we see three possible responses that we can start off with. On the Ginger side, this is actually a bigger project where what we're trying to do is that for every message that our coaches receive, we want to support them by predicting three responses that they can use to make their conversations go faster. Uh, so this is useful because it helps reduce the load of repetitive conversations. There are parts of conversations that repeat across members. Things like onboarding, things like scheduling, things like explaining the difference between ginger coaching and therapy, or ginger coaching and other forms of coaching. Those are the types of things that happen fairly often. Those are the types of things that a lot of that are explained to all of our members, and so that's where this is useful. uh, at the same time, it's useful for assisting coaches. This is not a replacement for our coaches. uh, and so that shows up in the type of model that we've built here and how we serve it. It's a retrieval based model that's pulling from previous coach responses. We're never generating a response here. We're only saying, hey, a previous coach or a different coach in this context said this very thing. Uh, is that useful? Would you like to use that reply? And that's really how it shows up for our coaches. And the last thing is that we use different models for different roles. So something that somebody says in a support role is different from what a coach is using to help and support the member. Uh, so, in terms of the core model, this is a fairly different model. At this point, we're using a deep learning model where what we do is for input, we have really three things. One is the last message, which is which is really the query for the model. The context, which is the last five messages, up to the last five messages, which provide more context about how we got to this point, and the historical responses, which includes all of the previous messages or with a certain that have occurred over a certain threshold number of times. Uh, so what we then do is we take that and apply to convert them into vectors and use them to pass through a smart reply model. The way that works is the model is then transferring the context and query into the response domain space, and that's really where it shines. So after that point, we can simply take a similarity between the query, the transformed query, and the original responses. Uh, and the last step there is what we call diversity sampling, where what we're trying to do is ensure the same type of responses don't show up a bunch of times. So if this is the first message in a conversation that's being sent, uh, our coaches see three fairly different responses in there. So it could be something like, hello there, good afternoon, and hi, how are you? That diversity allows for coaches to introduce their own sense, their own individuality. It ensures there is not a lot of repetition occurring there, and at the same time makes things feel more humane and personal to our members that are receiving those. Uh, and we do see a lot of success after we brought it into the product. We're seeing up to 40% lower response times in conversations. That means our members are experiencing just a much better experience. They're receiving messages faster from our coaches. And the other thing that's great to see is also that higher usage corresponds to higher ratings. In our analysis so far, we've seen statistical significant correlation between an increased usage of Smart Reply for coaches that use it to the ratings that they get from our members. The last broad product that I want to talk to you about is Coach Note Summarization. So, very similar to physicians and doctors, our coaches also write a daily coaching note as a part of their workflow of serving our members. Uh, the coaching note is really a summary of everything that happened in the session. So on the right there, there's a screenshot of what it looks like, what a blank note looks like before it gets filled up. And really, there are four headers, four sections that a coach is trying to fill in. What's going well? What are the challenges? What are next steps that they're going through with a member? And anything else that is useful, that could be useful for somebody else. Uh, this is also a critical part of the care that we provide because it increases collaboration between different members of the coaching team. It allows for coaches to collaborate with therapists and for therapists to have a clearer sense for what's going on with the coach. And at the same time, this is also important for ensuring quality. It also plays very closely into the quality assurance piece, uh, while also being something that's required for compliance reasons. So what we did here was to try to simplify how we can provide our coaches something more useful so that they can write their daily note in a much faster way. So for that, we built a summarization model that can take in the whole session transcript as an input and predict a single coach note as an output. uh, our prediction is split into four different sections, so which correspond exactly with the going well, challenges, next steps, and other sections. Uh, and this model is very closely derived from the BART model from Facebook a couple years ago. Um, the one key difference of this model from BART is that this supports up to 4096 tokens. So, because our input sessions are fairly long, they include messages that have occurred over a couple hours between a member and a coach, oftentimes between 50 and 100 messages. We need our model to be able to support longer inputs, and that's where we had to make adjustments, that we had to bring in our own customization to be able to extend this model so that we can do longer summaries. uh, at the same time, uh, so when we brought it into the product, what we saw was that more than 50% of the summary that our model produces gets used as is in the final note, which is great because that helps our coaches write notes much faster and reduces the workload that they have. Uh, and in our analysis so far, we've seen that at reduced by about 33%. So that's all of the things that we have so far. But we are continuously building, including right now, a bunch of other things that could help our coaches and clinicians help our members more. So one of the examples of that is what we call DS Lab, and or what that stands for is Data Science Lab. And really, the goal there is, how do we empower our care providers with conversational insights? How do we provide them things that models can detect and trends that models can identify over time in a way that they can digest it and use that for whatever they're working on. Uh, Another thing that we are working towards is a generative model, what that we call Smart Compose. This is also very closely derived from how Google is doing this in Gmail and now in Google Docs. But what we want to do is to be able to supercharge our coaches so that and build on top of Smart Reply, so we can use retrieval and generation in a collaborative way and help our coaches get through more conversations without it affecting the quality of care we provide and making it a better experience for our coaches and members. And there's a lot more. We do things like content recommendation, we do QA, we do uh, various other conversational AI stuff. We are always building supply demand models and so on. So the breadth of the work that we do within the machine learning team, and more specifically in the NLP space, is quite a lot. So I welcome you to come check out more of what we've done. And thank you.